Hi, I'm Olivia, and my life with Dennis is everything I could have ever wished for. He's the kind of man who can take apart an engine and put it back together while cracking jokes that make your sides hurt from laughing. 6 years ago, fate brought us together in the most unexpected way. My car broke down on the side of the road, and Dennis was the mechanic who came to my rescue. To this day, I still tease him about using that as his pickup line. Dennis has since built a stellar reputation in our community. If something has an engine, he can fix it, and people trust him with their most prized possessions. I couldn't be prouder to call him my husband. While he thrives in his world of gears and grease, I've been working hard to establish myself in my own career. Photography has always been my passion, and last spring, I was finally on the brink of success. I had just launched my own business, specializing in corporate events and professional headshots. My brand new studio was set up and ready to go, and clients were starting to roll in. Then, out of nowhere, my sister Julie showed up at my studio, unannounced as usual. She walked in with that smug smile of hers, the kind that always felt more like a challenge than a warm greeting. "Oh, sweetie," she said, clicking her tongue in fake sympathy. "Still playing with your little camera? I thought you'd have grown out of that hobby by now." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "It's not a hobby, Julie," I said, keeping my voice even. "I just landed the Timothy Industries account." For a split second, I saw her mask slip. Her eyes widened in surprise before she quickly covered it up with feigned indifference. "Really? How interesting," she mused. "Justin and I were just talking about how important image is in the professional world." Something about the way she said it sent a warning signal through my gut, but I brushed it off. I should have known better. A week later, my biggest potential client, Timothy Industries, suddenly canceled their contract without any explanation. I was devastated, confused. Then my best friend Helen, who worked in HR at Timothy Industries, called me, her voice seething with anger. "Olivia, I just found out what happened," she said. "Your sister contacted our marketing team and raised ethical concerns about hiring family members for professional services. That was bad enough, but she didn't stop there. She even showed them some amateur photos claiming they were yours." My grip tightened around my coffee mug, my hands shaking. "She did what?" Helen sighed heavily. "That's not all. She also suggested they hire Joyce instead. You know, her friend who just started dabbling in photography." My stomach turned. Julie had always been competitive, but this was deliberate, cold, calculated. She had sabotaged me, not just out of jealousy, but to push her own agenda. That night, Dennis found me in my home office, my eyes swollen from crying. He didn't say anything at first, he just pulled me into his arms and held me tight. "We'll figure this out," he whispered, his voice steady and sure. "You're too talented, too hardworking to let this stop you. And I'm not going to let her take away something you've built." I wanted to believe him, but at that moment, all I could feel was the crushing weight of betrayal. My own sister had taken a knife to my dreams, and I wasn't sure how to recover from it. I stared at my empty booking calendar, feeling the weight of disappointment settle in my chest. "Hey, engine of my life," Dennis said gently, using his favorite cheesy nickname for me. "Talk to me." I took a deep breath and poured out the whole story. Every detail of Julie's betrayal, my lost contract, and the feeling of helplessness that followed. Dennis listened intently, his expression serious, but full of love. Then, without hesitation, he pulled out his phone and started making calls. It turned out that Ryan, his mentor at the auto shop, was golf buddies with the CEO of Timothy Industries. By the end of the week, not only was my contract reinstated, but they had doubled the number of events they wanted me to cover. Helen, my best friend, made sure Julie's underhanded tactics didn't go unnoticed in professional circles. "Your sister doesn't realize how small the corporate world really is," Helen told me over lunch. "People talk. And trust me, they don't take kindly to dishonesty." The final blow to Julie's scheme came when Joyce, the photographer she had tried to replace me with, visited my studio to apologize. "I had no idea she was using me to hurt you," Joyce confessed, showing me the messages Julie had sent her. They detailed the entire plan to undermine my business. That evening, Dennis came home with a triumphant grin and 4 new client contracts in his hands. Turns out mechanics know a lot of business owners who need good photographers, he said with a wink. Some of my regulars were pretty excited when I mentioned your work. I hugged him tightly, overwhelmed with gratitude. With Dennis' connections and Helen's support, my business began to thrive again. That night, we celebrated with takeout from our favorite Italian restaurant, laughing and reminiscing over dumplings and sweet and sour chicken. For the first time in weeks, I felt a deep sense of peace and appreciation for the people who had my back. 3 weeks later, at our annual family reunion, the tension with Julie resurfaced. She and her husband, Dr. Patrick, arrived in a brand new Mercedes, making sure everyone noticed. Patrick just made partner at the hospital, Julie announced during dinner, barely touching her food. We're thinking of buying a vacation home in the Hamptons. You know how important the right connections are. Our cousin Victoria, always kind and genuine, turned to Dennis with a warm smile. How's work going? She asked, changing the subject in a way that reminded me why I cherished the family members who truly mattered. Dennis squeezed my hand under the table. Better than ever, he said, glancing at me with pride. And in that moment, I knew I had already won the battle that truly mattered. I heard you were promoted recently, Victoria said, turning to Dennis with a warm smile. Before Dennis could answer, Julie cut in with a smirk. Oh, you're still at that garage? I thought you'd have moved on to something more professional by now. Patrick knows some people in hospital administration. Maybe he could help you find a real career. The table fell silent. I saw Dennis's knuckles whiten around his fork, but his voice remained steady. I appreciate the offer, Julie, but I love what I do, he replied evenly, his calm tone cutting through the tension. Being a mechanic is a perfectly respectable career. Before Julie could retort, Ryan, Dennis's mentor and a father figure to him, spoke up from across the table. Dennis just saved the city bus company $70,000 by fixing a problem their so-called specialists couldn't figure out. Julie rolled her eyes dramatically. How fascinating. Speaking of transportation, Patrick, didn't you just get a call about a speaking engagement in Europe? Dr. Patrick shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Actually, I had to decline. The timing wasn't right. What do you mean you had to decline? Julie's voice rose sharply, irritation creeping into her tone. Julie, perhaps we should discuss this later, Patrick muttered, loosening his tie. The conversation eventually moved on, though I couldn't help but notice Patrick checking his phone repeatedly, his expression growing more concerned with each glance. After dessert, Julie abruptly announced they needed to leave early. Patrick has an important meeting tomorrow, she explained, fishing for her car keys. Some of us have real responsibilities. As they drove off, the sound of their Mercedes making a horrible grinding noise silenced everyone mid-conversation. Moments later, the car rolled to a halt halfway down the driveway. This is ridiculous. Julie's voice carried back to the house. Patrick, call our dealer right now. They're closed, Julie. It's Thursday evening. Well, we can't just stand here. Call a tow truck or something. From the porch, Dennis exchanged a knowing glance with Ryan, but said nothing. Julie's complaints echoed in the gathering darkness until Dennis finally wiped his hands on a napkin, stood up, and strolled toward them. Need a ride home? He called out, barely hiding his amusement. I can have someone from the shop look at your car first thing tomorrow, Dennis offered, his voice calm and professional. We're not letting some grease monkey touch our Mercedes. Julie snapped, crossing her arms. We'll wait for professional service. Thank you very much. Helen, who had been quietly observing the drama unfold, leaned over and whispered to me, Karma works fast these days. We left them standing in the driveway, Julie's voice growing shriller by the minute as she argued with Patrick about whose fault it was that they had skipped the car's last scheduled maintenance. The next morning, Wednesday morning, Dennis received an unexpected call from Patrick himself. Listen, Dennis, about the car? The dealership can't look at it until next week. I have critical patient appointments, and Julie is furious. I hate to ask, but I'll take care of it, Dennis interrupted, his voice neutral. Have it towed to the shop. An hour later, Julie stormed into Ryan's auto shop as though she owned the place. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, her eyes blazing. "This is completely unacceptable. Do you even know how much this car costs?" she demanded. Joyce, who had brought her own car in for service, looked up from the waiting area with a smirk. "More than you can afford, apparently." Dennis emerged from under the Mercedes, wiping his hands on a rag and holding up his tablet. "Your transmission has major issues, and your brake lines are severely corroded. When's the last time you had it serviced?" "That's impossible," Julie scoffed. "Patrick handles all that." Patrick shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, I've been meaning to tell you. We've had to postpone some maintenance. The hospital's been making cuts, and with the new house payments..." Julie's head snapped toward him, her voice incredulous. "What are you talking about? You're a doctor. You're a partner at the hospital." Patrick swallowed hard and loosened his tie. "Not exactly. I was passed over for partner. The speaking engagement in Europe? It was a job interview, Julie. We're in trouble." The color drained from Julie's face. "This is ridiculous. We'll just buy a new car." Patrick let out a bitter laugh. "With what money, Julie? We're already maxed out. The house is mortgaged to the limit. You're spending." "Don't you dare blame this on me." Julie shrieked, but the fear in her eyes betrayed her. Silence filled the shop as reality set in. Dennis exchanged a glance with Ryan, who simply shook his head. Karma really did work fast. A lesson in appearances. Julie snapped, turning on Dennis. "This is probably some kind of scam. He's just a mechanic. What does he know about luxury cars?" Before Dennis could respond, Ryan stepped out of his office, arms crossed. "Dennis is certified for high-end European vehicles. In fact, he's one of only 3 mechanics in the entire state with a specialized Mercedes certification. But if you don't want our help..." Julie froze. Joyce, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "The hospital board members bring their cars here, Julie. That's how I found this place." Just last week, Dr. Benjamin was saying how impressed he was with Dennis's work on his Porsche. Patrick, looking desperate, grabbed Dennis's arm. "Can you fix it? I have surgery scheduled. I can't afford to lose any more credibility with the board." Dennis remained calm. "The parts will be expensive, and it'll take a few days to do it right." "Just do what you have to do," Patrick said, handing over his credit card without hesitation. He ignored Julie's protests. She stood there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Every eye in the waiting room was on her, including several people she recognized from her social circle. Face flushed, she muttered, "I'll wait in the car." Joyce smirked. "Good luck with that. It's not going anywhere." Over the next 4 days, Dennis worked tirelessly on the Mercedes, meticulously undoing years of neglect. As he examined the damage, he shook his head. "This car is just a symptom," he explained. "They've been living on appearances. Patrick is a great doctor, but Julie pushed them into a lifestyle they couldn't afford." Word spread quickly through the hospital's inner circles. Helen called to tell me that Julie had been notably absent from the weekly charity committee meeting. "Everyone's talking about how she lied about Patrick being a partner at the hospital. The board members' wives are furious," Helen whispered. Later, Joyce stopped by my studio with an update. "Julie's been calling everyone, trying to do damage control. But, you know what? People are way more impressed by how Dennis and Patrick handled everything. Dr. Benjamin even asked me to pass his card to Dennis. The hospital is looking for a new service contract for their ambulance fleet." A week later, Julie showed up at our house alone. She looked different. No designer handbag, no perfectly styled hair. She sat stiffly on the couch, her posture as rigid as her expression. For the first time, Julie had nothing to hide behind. "I suppose you're happy now," Julie said, her voice sharp with bitterness. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, waiting for whatever came next. "Everything's falling apart," she continued. "Patrick insists we sell the house. Says we need to live within our means. The hospital wives won't even return my calls." I met her gaze steadily. "That's not my fault, Julie." She exhaled, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "No, it's not," she admitted, her voice quieter now. "Patrick showed me the repair bill. Dennis charged less than the dealership would have. He did good work. For a brief moment, she sounded almost grateful. But just as quickly, her usual walls went back up. I'm not apologizing, she added hastily. I need a favor. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The charity committee is organizing the hospital's annual fundraiser, she explained. They need a photographer. I kept my tone polite but firm. My schedule's fully booked. I just hired an assistant to help with all the new corporate contracts. Then, after a brief pause, I added, but I heard Joyce is available. Julie stiffened. She smoothed down the fabric of her off-the-rack dress, so different from the designer labels she once flaunted. Right, she said, nodding stiffly. Of course. I should go. I watched as she walked to her car. No longer the gleaming luxury vehicle she once adored, but an ordinary Toyota. Without another word, she drove away. Moments later, Dennis pulled into the driveway in his work truck, the hospital's new service contract logo freshly painted on the side. Ryan had given him the green light to manage the hospital account, and judging by his grin, he was more than ready for the challenge. We're hiring 2 more mechanics to handle the workload, he said, pride evident in his voice. That evening, Helen and Joyce came over to celebrate. We sat in the backyard, enjoying the simple pleasure of good friends, laughter, and takeout pizza. Did you hear? Helen asked, taking a sip of her drink. Patrick finally stood up to Julie. Joyce smirked. About time? He's taking that position in Europe, Helen continued. Said they need a fresh start. Julie has 2 choices. Go with him and live on a regular doctor salary or stay here on her own. Joyce chuckled, shaking her head. Sometimes people create their own karma. All you have to do is let them. Dennis reached for my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of the past finally lift. True wealth isn't measured in luxury. We sat together, watching the sun slowly dip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. There was a quiet peace in that moment, the kind that money could never buy. We didn't need expensive cars, designer clothes, or lavish vacations to prove our worth. What we had was something far more valuable: respect, honest work, and the kind of people who truly cared about us. At the end of the day, that's what really matters. It's easy to feel small when someone looks down on your career, your choices, or the life you've built. But true success isn't about impressing others. It's about staying true to yourself. Have you ever faced someone who underestimated you because of your job or lifestyle? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories of resilience and self-worth. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real-life lessons about what truly matters in life.